There is an unwelcome guest in the oldest house. Is a building with no windows meant to keep people out, or keep something else in, hidden from view? That's the eternal question behind one of the most mysterious yet unassuming buildings in New York City. The building, 33 Thomas Street, sticks out like some kind of glitched texture in the city's grid code. Its architect, John Carl Warnecke, was famous for designing other government buildings with unique qualities that overall blended in with their larger environments. Lafayette Square in DC, the Hawaii State Capitol, and the Kennedy gravesite are all structures that don't look like government buildings. These buildings are enduring, and it shows that Warnecke was an architect that loved contextual architecture, a philosophy where buildings fit into the larger environment like a glove. Which is confusing as to why 33 Thomas Street was designed by the same person. Towering above the others, it stands alone as one of the only brutalist-style buildings in Manhattan, made up of almost entirely of concrete walls so thick that it could withstand a nuclear blast. The building was built to last a long time. It's home to AT&T, and the building is known colloquially as the Long Lines Building, which runs thousands of telephone connections through the structure. If some kind of nuclear disaster were to happen to the US, we would want our communication centers to remain intact, so the Long Lines Building had to be constructed to withstand such a catastrophe. But darker secrets surround 33 Thomas. An investigation from The Intercept designated 33 Thomas Street as an NSA surveillance center, codenamed Titan Point. It's pretty well known at this point that industry titans and the US government often collaborate to spy on American citizens. A quick Google search on Edward Snowden will tell you all you need to know on that subject. AT&T did it even before 33 Thomas was constructed, working with the FBI to do wiretaps on their phone lines. And they're still doing it in present day, as whistleblowers like Mark Klein have detailed their history of amassing millions of emails from private citizens using their internet services. The Intercept detailed Titan Point's primary purpose, which is intercepting satellite data, telephone calls, and eventually digital communications, and then sending that audio and data to the NSA for processing. AT&T representatives deny any direct involvement with the NSA in the physical locations of the building, but multiple reports leaked by Edward Snowden pinpoints a guide linking NSA operations directly to 33 Thomas Street. But for now, no one besides Snowden and The Intercept have taken any action. The Intercept reached the far ends of what can be physically proven without a security clearance. By definition, the secrets of the NSA hide in plain sight behind the facade of this telecommunications building. 33 Thomas Street is a reminder that some government secrets remain far outside the scope of what we can see with the naked eye, and all we can muster in the face of it is a sense of dread. Dread of security clearances and government dossiers, dread of the people that keep information from us and the corporations that work in tandem with them, dread for bureaucracy. Which makes it so clear why Remedy Entertainment chose 33 Thomas Street as the inspiration for their 2019 game, Control. Control is a game of constant mystery. You play as Jessie, a woman who encounters a building in the middle of New York City that's invisible to everyone, almost everyone, except those who are explicitly looking for it. It's nearly identical to 33 Thomas Street, located just next door at number 34. This building, the oldest house, holds the Federal Bureau of Control, a secret government department that's tasked to analyze ghosts, haunted objects, and beings from other dimensions. Jessie is here for her brother, who the FBC captured. But while Jessie is trying to find her brother, the FBC tasks her with the unknowable task of the directorship of the entire agency. She must travel the bowels of the agency building, battling an unknown threat. Everything in the game looks drab, gray, and uninteresting. Exactly what you'd expect from a government building. Except it's hiding something much more sinister within its walls. A parasite, waiting to latch on to anyone willing to listen to it. Anyone willing to give it its undue grace.
There is an unwelcome guest in the oldest house.
The moment from Control that got permanently stuck in my brain that made me even want to make this video in the first place was not so much as a moment, but an entire sequence. It captures such a stark contrast in gameplay from the overall vibe of the game that I can't wrap my head around. Anyways, there's a portion of the oldest house in the facility's research division. It starts as a large bridge overlooking an endless expanse of nothing, moving into a hallway unstuck in time, lined with striped wallpaper and oak accents. As Jessie traverses these hallways, they begin to tessellate new entrances and exits until it spits Jessie back out at the start. It's an impossible maze, adequately named the Ashtray Maze, for the ashtray that you find in each room. Until Jessie gets some help from Ahti, the familiar Finnish janitor that roams the halls of the oldest house. He gives you some headphones, and suddenly, the corridors of the Ashtray Maze open up into a symphony of rock and roll and cover shooting. Everything is constantly shifting around each other. The floor is on the ceiling is on the floor, platforms keep rising out of the abyss, all the while enemies are trying to kill you from these different vantage points. And all of this is backed by a crazy rock song that I can't play right now because of copyright, but I will do my best to find something that even remotely fits the bill, but it doesn't even come close to how cool it sounds in the game. This is not the only time where Control turns up the action to 11, nor is it the only time that it bends the visual parameters of the environment, but it is one of the only times where it does both on a massive scale. On the face of it, Control is separated into two different games. One is a fast-moving third-person shooter that is challenging on a variety of levels, and the other is a hollow reflection of what Bureaucracy can look like when it goes wrong. But somehow, both games glued together to give players an unforgettable experience, both telling a story about how the need for control distracts leaders from achieving public goals, while also letting you murder as many ghosts as you want along the way. In Control, everything is malleable. This goes for both sides of this game, but it's especially true for the combat. It's really hard to find third-person shooters that move like it. Third-person shooters in general for me have more of a static feel to them because there isn't anything really propelling the character forward in any meaningful way other than moving from one cover spot to another cover spot. So it's games that break this monotony that truly stick out for me. Control is that much needed break. Its combat feels amazing to participate in. Jessie is a dynamic protagonist, whooshing around the map with the greatest of ease, popping enemies left and right with her service weapon, which is the pistol that you get at the beginning of the game, and launching anything that she can possibly grab with her telekinetic powers. And if you can't grab anything nearby, Jessie physically rips apart the building of the oldest house. Oddly, the difficulty that comes with these combat encounters isn't really predicated on enemy strength, but more enemy placements. I'd be paying attention to so many enemies on the ground that I forgot that there was some abomination on the ceiling trying to eviscerate me. And this unpredictability, entropy, and dynamism is in the enemy design as well. Enemies that Jessie fights in Control are all previous FBC employees, but they've been infected by this paranatural entity that the game names the Hiss. It's a powerful motif because it spans and infects every sense that the player can possibly experience. The oldest house lacks color, but the Hiss provides a contrast in their ruby dark red overtones, shadowing each enemy and their area in their domain. They're constantly spouting nonsense phrases in the background, but they're pitched up and down at dissonant tones to constantly put the player on edge. Hiss enemies also fly, shoot grenades, and explode themselves to add another element of entropy to every encounter. And the creepiest part of them all? Once they die, they disappear in a wisp of smoke, just like their previous lives weren't even there. The Hiss is called the Hiss because it's something that's just out of reach of description. It's a sound. It's never quite there for long, but it leaves a lasting impact on those who hear it. Outside of combat, everything else is shifting in response to Jessie. Every time Jessie uses her dash move that you unlock part of the way into the game, the space physically warps in reaction to it. Papers fly everywhere, objects get forced back, the literal foundation of the oldest house crumbles in response to Jessie's presence. The rest of the game's assets move around Jessie and the characters she speaks with. The lighting moves in and out of relevancy, sometimes a giant window on the ceiling being the only light source in a room, and sometimes you get nothing except for the red glow of the Hiss. And sometimes, you truly get nothing. Even the architecture of the space around Jessie is always in motion. There's a certain amount of quantum trickery within Control's levels. Every time Jessie interacts with a paranatural object or something that's haunted, something about the room changes. A hallway turns into a spiral, an elevator shaft becomes endless, a quarry melds into infinite space. All of these aspects come together under the overall theme of visual effects. Mikhail Kasserinen, game director of Control, told Polygon how much visual effects mean to Remedy as a studio, specifically particle effects, when he says that particle effects are the physical representation of experiences where the player gets feedback, where they have a very clear understanding of the consequences of their actions. I feel like the player could read Jessie's dynamism in the way that everything is constantly moving in any number of ways. Is she the savior that's bringing the much needed change to the endlessly slow pace of government bureaucracy? Is she going to tear it all down from the inside as the new director of the US Department of Ghost Hunting? The answer is in neither of these options. That's not the story that Remedy is trying to tell here.
There is an unwelcome guest in the oldest house.
Control paints working at the bureaucracy of the FBC, and even the United States on the whole, to be one of the most soul-crushing experiences that one can have in their life. All you do all day is either push papers, get coffee for others, or work to research and contain extradimensional horrors beyond my imagination that may kill you at a moment's notice. I personally am not the biggest fan of every aspect of bureaucracies. Sometimes they make things worse, like formalizing lots of different ways of state violence in agencies like the CIA and FBI, or even that so much of bureaucracies are inherently bent to partisan whims. Every gain made in a previous administration can be just as easily eroded away in the next. These institutions don't have the staying power that we think they do. They're constantly swinging on a pendulum of usefulness. It's here where Control's narrative and environment is more of a reflection of how bureaucracy moves. I don't think that every single portion of a modern democratic bureaucracy works, and I don't think Control's developers want you to think that either. But what it does show is the people behind the decision making, mainly through how they interact with the environment and with each other. The person-to-person and person-to-environment interactions show that bureaucracy needs to keep moving to protect those most vulnerable in society. And it's made up of hardworking people that get caught in the crossfire when outsiders try to set fire to bureaucracy on the whole. It starts with the interactions in the oldest house. Fans of the last video hopefully will like this part. The oldest house is a brutalist piece of architecture. Every floor in this building is made mostly of concrete, gigantic slabs of it. They dominate every space that they're in. Concrete is an interesting building material because, as the 99% Invisible podcast puts it, it's just too outdated to be modern, but it's too young to be classic. It's at this weird inflection point that's just off-putting enough to most people who would spend their entire day in a brutalist building. And it's easy to see why people have a problem with this kind of architecture. It's extremely static. It's reminiscent of singular control of an architectural style. It's reminiscent of the Soviet Union and their miles of buildings made entirely of the stuff, which leaves a sour taste in many old people's mouths. But the concrete in Control is not normal. Sure, it's still concrete that looks like any other building you could see in real life, but the concrete in Control moves. Jessie learns this very early in her tenure as director of the FBC, which is that the oldest house is alive. The house was here before the FBC was even here. They just moved in. The building is constantly shifting around. Floors move from top to bottom. Rooms appear that weren't there before. People complain about their bathrooms getting moved across the entire building before showing up right next to them 2 weeks later. It's an environment that's constantly in flux. It even shows up when Jessie forcibly removes the hiss from certain portions of the oldest house. As Jessie claims control points, which are the checkpoints in the game, the house moves around, extending farther beyond the limits of the original room's space. It carves out the space for more people and things to be in when the corrupting force is removed. Concrete being a dynamic building material has implications for the entire rest of the game. No longer is this building a static, immobile landscape that Jessie is allowed to move freely in. No. The building becomes a living current of concrete that people need to work and plan their lives around. It becomes more human, ebbing and flowing for seemingly no reason other than it just wants to. Humans who work in the FBC move in the same way as this current. Take the endless current of paperwork. Bureaucratic institutions like the FBC have a ton of paperwork by nature. There are novels worth of documents lying around the place, detailing every single thing that the FBC holds in storage, communications between departments, and new developments in research. Yet for all this paperwork, not a lot is really being said. For every 10 words in a document about an object of power or research or new communications, about 2 or 3 of them are blacked out. So much of what the player could be learning about the untold horrors of the world is redacted from public knowledge. The player has to fill in those gaps themselves. In Jacob Geller's video essay about control and anatomy and their implications as haunted houses, he brings up a really good point about how it doesn't really seem like the scientists and administrators in control actually know anything about the things they're studying. That they're simply saying, these things can be true, but they also might not be. I'm inclined to agree with him here. It's in this lack of meaning where Remedy really shows its harshest critique of bureaucracy and its inefficiencies, but only on a surface level. It seems like there's just so much paperwork, all just to hold these haunted items without really studying them on a deeper level. The FBC even created an entirely new wing of research just to study one haunted object, while countless others get left by the wayside and locked away forever. To waste this amount of resources on everything is just not something that's realistic or seemingly even that useful. So instead, they just write about it and do nothing. The sea of people and paperwork at the Federal Bureau of Control is seemingly moving around a lot, ebbing and flowing for no reason. But currents do more than we realize. They show us the directions of the sea below. For every document that says nothing, there are 3 more that delve into the personal relationships between the Federal Bureau of Control employees. Illicit poker games, water cooler conversations, people talking about other people's files. Remedy shows here that it's not about the paper pushing or the constant reporting on nothing. No, it's the people that work at the FBC that make it run. It's the people like Emily Pope who care about the research that they do, constantly work up through the ranks, and then somehow come out on top after the entire department gets vaporized by the hiss. Or others like Dr. Casper Darling, who cares so much about the research that he leaves behind the videos chronicling it in extreme detail, taking a stark departure from the blank forms that is common for every subsection of the FBC's divisions. It's no accident that Ahti, the Finnish janitor from the beginning of the video, is one of the most powerful characters in the Control universe, seemingly able to slip in and out of reality whenever he pleases. He's the only person besides the previous director, Zachariah Trench, who is able to fully project himself into the astral plane, speaking to Jessie through a silhouette while he's on vacation from his very hard job. It's almost poetic that the most menial job is held by the person that has the most power out of anyone who works at the FBC. Mikhail Kasarinen and Sam Lake don't belittle any of these jobs. In fact, they give them so much grace. They take the time to show how much work goes into each of these positions, manning the battlements to make sure that ghosts do not invade the United States. In any efforts to paint bureaucracies as evil entities that only care about progress, slow results, and don't care about the people that get in the way, Remedy demonstrates an incredible attention to detail about the everyday people that work in these bureaucratic machines. These people are trying their best to do what's right, all while making sure that certain items imbued with ghostly powers don't destroy everything. It's here where the flood of paperwork at the FBC and the seemingly errant personal characterizations of the minor characters actually do mean something to the story. They show a government that's alive, a government that's always moving, and a government that actually cares and stopping the threats that they are tasked to stop. It's these people that mainly have to bear the brunt of the director's wrath, like Jessie and those that came before her. The bureau directors are the ship captains trying to master the current of people that they manage, with varying degrees of success. Because for the people running the FBC, heavy is the head that is filled with bad ideas.
There is an unwelcome guest in the oldest house.
Jessie Faden only becomes the director of the Federal Bureau of Control because the previous director is killed. The pressure of the job got to him, but it wasn't really the pressure. It was the hiss. In all honesty, the director of the FBC has one of the weirdest and probably the most stressful jobs in games that I have ever seen. They must regulate and oversee every ghost and cursed object that they encounter and store it in the oldest house. They are responsible for every going on that happens inside and outside of the building. And they all have different management styles, per se. Take Broderick Northmore, a figure that characters in Control hint to and is only really told through fatigued photographs and brief mentions in company memos. Northmore was the director that ruled before the previous one that Jessie sees dead, and Northmore ruled with an iron fist. He was someone who had no care for any normal person that worked at the FBC. He and the rest of his team moved the FBC into the oldest house, and it was Northmore that helped usher in the FBC to be a commanding force for the ghastly paranatural world. Only that never was his real focus. In trying to make the agency a force to be reckoned with, Northmore turned himself into a human battery for the paranatural objects the FBC collected. He could control the first paranatural objects that the FBC stored with new psychic powers like telekinesis. He also could generate heat from his body at will, a living representation of his anger and his madness for control. All he was focused on was accumulating so much power that the only reason the FBC could be afraid of any new paranatural threat ever again was because he himself could not stop it. Except this power had to run out sometime. Northmore's power never really ran out, but his ability to lead the FBC effectively did. His successor, Zachariah Trench, made him medically retire. But someone like Northmore, such a firebrand, could never retire. No, he believed in a lifelong servitude to government and the FBC in some twisted sense of duty. So the FBC does something so twisted that I completely missed it on a first playthrough. In Control's second chapter, Ahti the janitor makes Jessie venture down to the bowels of the oldest house in the maintenance sector. It's here where the NSC power plant is, the generator for all of the energy of the entire Federal Bureau of Control. It's a massive structure that spans one of the largest spaces in the entire game. But at its center lies something that I could barely expect. See, the name of the power plant is NSC, but why not FBC? Why wouldn't it be named after the building or the agency that it's powering? That's because it's not a power plant. It's a prison. The name of the NSC power plant is the Northmore Sarcophagus Containment. Northmore was never going to retire, so they've granted his wish for a life of servitude. Buried alive in the bottom of the oldest house, hermetically sealed in the grave of his own making, powering the rest of the facility. His hubris didn't cost him his life, but something far worse for him. His public image. Trench, his successor, isn't much better. It's probably a good time to delve into some of the mega ultra spoilers here, so if you don't want to be spoiled of the entire back half of the plot of Control, now is probably a great time to click off the video. Okay, now that the rest of you are here, let's begin. In short, Jessie and her brother Dylan first became acquainted with ghosts and paranatural beings when they were young, growing up in ordinary Indiana. While playing one day, they found a slide projector that when used opened up doors to other realities. They gave both Dylan and Jessie supernatural powers. The FBC quickly swooped in, kidnapping Dylan but failing to capture Jessie. When Jessie opened the portal on the slide deck, she let out a ghostly entity known as Hedron, which Jessie nicknames Polaris. Hedron/Polaris also gives Jessie and Dylan psychic abilities that Jessie puts on display throughout the entirety of Control. Back at the FBC, Hedron begins to slowly communicate with the FBC employees and starts to influence them in their decision making. It's all for good as far as we know, though. The head of research at the FBC, Casper Darling, creates an entirely new branch of the FBC, Dimensional Research, to study only the anomaly that happened in Ordinary and the slide deck. After Hedron communicates with him more, he creates the Hedron Resonance Amplifiers, which are the devices that the NPCs in Control wear that protect them from the hiss. The focus on Hedron takes more and more time away from FBC employees, and more direction and control away from Trench. Trench is losing it. As the director, he was the person that exemplified how much the director's position meant to the rest of the FBC. He himself constructed entire wings in the oldest house for new areas of study and for a few other means of imprisoning altered objects. But he was failing to justify it to himself that he still had this type of control. Everyone was focused on protecting Hedron and studying it, but for all of the maybe bad things that Darling and the rest of the employees were doing, Trench did something far worse. He let the hiss in the back door. At the end of his rope, while everyone else in the Bureau is searching for answers in faraway dimensions, Trench begins to listen to the very enemies he was supposed to keep in check. Unbeknownst to him, on an expedition while studying the slide deck that linked Darling to Hedron, the hiss, another paranatural entity, spoke to him. The hiss, imprisoned within the slide deck, spoke to him, and he listened. The bureaucracy of the FBC was never soulless while so many people were working towards a better world. No, it was soulless because of the figures at the top couldn't resist the beckoning of evil. Now, all that Jessie gets are projections of Trench, telling her what to do from a time where he wasn't something so treasonous to his own position. Now all that's left of the FBC is a husk of its former accomplishments, and their number one test subject, Dylan Faden, became the perfect host for the Hiss. And even when Trench listens to what he believes is his only friend, they dispose of him, just as quickly as they trusted him. The evils of bureaucracy don't come from the people and the ethos of the departments they're running. The evils come from when the evil things they're regulating speak louder than they can. When ghostly, paranatural, and evil entities speak as if they are the government fails to do their job. The Hiss, much like letting the evils of the world run free in real life, reduce people to wisps of their former selves. Only an abstraction of their figure and written materials are left behind. It makes them hollow in anything but outward appearance. They become less than air, something ghastly that reminds people of what these people used to represent. They have let strangers into the oldest house.
There is an unwelcome guest in the oldest house. There is an unwelcome guest in the oldest house.
Elon Musk is one of the most comically stupid, comically laughable, and comically evil people that exists right now. He is a con man disguising himself as a visionary with an ego that is just about as big as his hyperinflated Tesla stock price. Somehow, some way, we have found ourselves in the darkest timeline of letting an unelected billionaire have so much power. And Donald Trump just lets him do it because he gave over $200 million to his campaign. His words only fuel more and more hate for minorities, the impoverished, and people trying to get by on the margins of life. And most importantly, public servants. In the year 2025, Elon Musk has personally supervised the strategic dismantling of US aid as a force for good in US global policy, the firing of thousands of employees at scientific research institutions like the NIH, CDC, and FDA, the firing of thousands of employees at the Veterans Administration, which are disproportionately veterans, the gutting of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which protects Americans from getting ripped off by banks who do predatory lending. He supervised a group of prepubescent tech bros getting access to the Treasury payment systems. He also pushed for cuts in both funding and jobs to the Social Security Administration, calling a program that my parents, grandparents, and hundreds of millions of others have been paying into for decades for their retirement. He overhauled the FAA, which he has a direct conflict of interest with in his presence as CEO of SpaceX. He pretty much has gone into every single database that the federal government has and deleting everything that mentions DEI or transgender people. Even if he didn't do that himself, he encouraged that on the campaign trail. He potentially is in favor of scrapping the entire FEMA program that gives disaster relief to American citizens who are affected by hurricanes, wildfires, and earthquakes. And he wants to get rid of the fucking National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which does research on weather and climate data. The thing is that I could sit here and name things one after another that he does every day, because every single day that he's in contact with the president and the White House, it seems like he does something more horrific. But I'm not going to be able to mention all of these things, because by the time I publish this video, there will probably be at least 10 more offenses that are completely inexcusable. Every single one of his actions are totally unaccountable because he is an unelected billionaire. But even more than all of the evil shit that he has done while working at the White House is the larger effect that he's had on the Trump administration. With his bold attitude to dismantling necessary social programs and tearing lives apart, he's emboldened Trump and his cabinet to take similar steps, deporting millions of people without due process, kidnapping permanent residents, and taking control of bastions of American art and creativity, while simultaneously spouting absolute fucking nonsense social policy that screws transgender people and people of different races than his. I don't even want to begin to talk about how, while positioning himself as one of the most accomplished businessmen that has walked the earth, he has lucked and conned himself into these positions of power. He forced the rest of Tesla's leadership out to claim himself as the CEO way back when. He's turned Twitter into a right-wing echo chamber full of idiots and people trying to sell you crypto scams. He is not a person that is smart, he's not a genius, he's a fucking idiot. He's just someone who doesn't believe that poor people should have rights and that the government should fund his space company because he believes the planet is a lost cause. Elon Musk is the Hiss. And the Trump administration has let a stranger into the oldest house, being the fucking federal government. He has made a mockery of it, he has ruined lives, and he will continue to ruin more if left unchecked. He is the parasite. It's time we excise this person, this tumor, from our lives.
There is an unwelcome guest in the oldest house.
It's time to lock the door. One last thing before we say goodbye. I just wanted to say thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers. I really appreciate all the love on the last video, and I can't wait to keep making more like this and like the previous video and pretty much anything that I love. I love talking about video games. I love talking about history, love talking about politics. Love talking about all of it, and I love talking about it to all of you. So, thank you so much. Please remember to subscribe, like the video, share with your friends, all the whole shebang, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching my video. Goodbye.